Hello there. We're off to RHS Hyde Hall today. That's RHS meaning the Royal Horticultural Society. It's a garden full of plants. I'm actually here to see this, which is the dogwood, the cornus, which has a special season when it goes all kind of red and orange and looks splendid. But while I was there, I noticed this barn, this thatched barn, which is just behind the restaurant there, where I just had a fine lunch. And you'll laugh. And I found some seats in an area which wasn't being used, and I thought, there's a perfect seat and a not perfect subject, the kind of back of this thatched barn. And I thought it would be a good example of how the use of kind of colour and intensity and mark making can really elevate what might be considered a relatively uninteresting topic. I mean, that's not fair, is it? It's a thatched barn, so it's a barn where the roof is made of reed, which is a very traditional kind of technique in this part of our country. But it's not as if it has a particular subject as far as the drawing is concerned. It's literally just a closed barn door. So you can imagine it isn't the kind of thing you'd photograph, put it like that. But when you're doing a drawing, you can add personality with how you do the drawing. So I thought I'd sort of just talk through this process a little bit. So you'll see I've picked a piece of toned card. It's a light grey. It's a light grey kind of day, to be honest. There's no sunlight, there's no shadowing, although I will be adding some fake shadowing for my own dramatic benefit. But I'm using a toned colour of card, so I can do what you see here, which is going with some bright, the sky and the ground, and sort of immediately, with as quick a sort of amount of marks as possible, really create a sense of impact of the drawing having been started, this sense of needing to feel as if the drawings are started as quickly as possible. You'll notice that I haven't done any pencil lines at all. There's no structure here. So if I was doing a pencil line, that's my way of saying I want this to be correct. I want there to be the correct proportions. So if I'm drawing something which is iconic, something where the proportions need to be right, so if I was drawing Tower Bridge or something like that, I'd use some pencil lines to make sure that proportionately I was going to get the drawing right. But when I'm drawing a thing like this, which is, it just doesn't matter whether it's the correct proportions or not. No one's going to know whether this is, slightly too tall or slightly too wide. In fact, you'll notice when you see the footage of the barn that I've compressed the left-hand side of the roof back. I wanted that left-hand side to be in the drawing. The roof is actually longer than I'm showing, and I've pulled it back purely so it's on the page, so people can see the end of the roof. So those are decisions you can take when you're doing a drawing, and if you can accept that amount of freedom, then you can accept that you don't need a pencil line. You can just jump straight in there and start drawing it, mainly because it's faster. Again, I get criticised for going on about being a bit lazy and a bit kind of hasty. Guess I should apologise for that on one level. But what I'm really saying is, if you don't worry too much and just get into the drawing, after a few drawings you find you can trust what you do. I think the majority of the people have problems with second guessing themselves. So you draw a line and you think, is that the right line? I mean, you see people doing what looks a bit crazy to me. They'll put two dots down and then draw a line between the two dots as if that's a way of being precise. And of course my question would be, how do you know the dots in the right position? Why not just draw the line in the first place? So accept inherent error as part of personality and just draw the damn thing as quickly as possible and with as much fun as possible. So you see I've gone in with some big bold marks with the acrylic pens. Now I'm going in with both fine white lines and the black line using the Indigraph fountain pens, just to really get the drawing established, just so I can start to feel the character. I see the colour that you see in the drawing as being like an underlay. It provides the kind of the tonal balance of the drawing. It gives it that kind of colour glow. And as soon as you start putting fine line on top of it, it brings focus to it. So you can see that the colour drawing is slightly blurry and the lines bring sharpness, obviously, because they're fine. So the sharpness against the blurry coloured background gives an immediate kind of punch, an immediate kind of stylistic something. It's one of many techniques you can use, and it's a fast one, so it's kind of convenient. You see lots of people who basically apply colour first in a way that's not particularly precise, and then fine line that brings more precision. And this is an extension of that, just using kind of pens rather than brushes. Looking at this barn, there's lots of little windows and panels that, if they were open, would be probably very charming. I imagine this opens up and there's sort of an extension to a restaurant or some seating inside, and if it had been an open barn, it would probably be a more interesting draw. And I did consider for a second, faking that, shall I draw the barn doors open? It has these little panel doors in the middle of the bigger door, shall I show those open? And I thought that might be a step too far, so I've actively decided to draw that which I see, but as I say, try and draw it with as much energy. Energy comes through two things for me. It really comes through colour and the sort of textural marks you use. I mean, you'll see the kind of violet coloured marking on the kind of brick area of the floor, and how I've specifically marked it in a way to give it some drama, so it really feels as if it's more than just this is an area of brick. I mean, you could imagine a paved area like this could simply be drawn with a block of orangey red and a bit of, a few lines, and it could be quite a flat and rather dead surface. Because it's in ultimately the foreground, and because the drawing is lacking a subject, I think every part of the drawing needs to be just bumped up a bit, just enhanced, in order that the whole thing forms a kind of textural interest. So I've gone in with the violet wide sort of 15mm marker pen in order to block in some kind of dramatic form, as if it's maybe in shadow or texturally just richened. That most people, when they're looking at the final drawing, they're not going to look at those grey areas specifically. They're not thinking, but why is there a block of grey there and a block of lighter colour there? What they're reading, as you would have done when you looked at the original drawing on that kind of opening page, all you're looking at is the overall impression, and that's as it should be. No one's actually looking at the sort of behind the layers and the textures of the drawing to kind of pick up on the process, the kind of layering, almost like it's layers in Photoshop, that you're kind of literally putting one layer on top of another in order to build up enough complexity that it sort of dances a bit in front of your eyes, and it kind of feels like a cleverer drawing than it perhaps really is. It's simply a matter of one pen at a time, going through a process and gradually building up this kind of textual complexity that brings the impression of kind of creative depth. So here we are using, again, one of my favourite pens at the moment, which is the Pentel sort of brush pen, which has a pigment ink in it, very intense, very dark. So that's doing a great job of providing now the second layer of focus. So the first layer of focus being the fine line black line, the second layer being a thicker, more casual but darker black, that sense of the intensity of that punch. And you can see how those two line types, using the two kinds of pen, are really pulling together and forming something much more forward out of the drawing. The drawing is now becoming sharper and projecting out into the eye. It's no longer sitting back, it's jumping forwards. And again, it's an intentional little device, starting fine and then becoming more bold and more sort of extreme, if you like, with the line type, so that eventually the whole drawing starts to kind of punch out a bit. It's really, the drawing's trying to grab your attention. I mean, the drawing is drawn to do that. It's not trying to sort of accurately represent the honest textures that we see in that thatched barn. It's trying to boost them. It's actually allowing that barn to sort of punch above its weight a bit, to have more visual character and intensity, definitely more colour. I mean, everything's enhanced, everything's been boosted, and it's boosted to benefit the character of the drawing, really. It's boosted so that the drawing has a reason for being, because as I say, you could easily just look around this little courtyard and look straight past this barn and not really think twice about it. but it's interesting for us as sketchers to use our techniques to kind of elevate things. You'll often see drawings of a sort of, I don't know, some street scene where you can't imagine somebody having taken a photograph of the same scene. The photograph would demonstrate it's not a particularly interesting street scene, but the drawing of that same scene elevates it. The act of bringing a sort of creative energy to how you represent that view elevates that view into something more visually engaging to the eye. The eye sees more because the drawing shows more. Here you see me going in with the blue. Now, it was not a blue sky day. In fact, there was a little bit of rain in the air at times, but as is always the case with me, I like to show the colour that I wish the sky was. I say that with a smile, because who doesn't want to have a blue sky day? Who doesn't want to believe they're in the south of France today? I want to be in Provence, and I want to be looking at that blue sky. I'm bringing that blue sky pen out with me because it makes me smile, and it makes the drawing smile. I think it makes the drawing happy. I have no hesitation in falsifying the weather. You know, in the same way, I'm not going to show raindrops in the air, or I'm not going to show it's cold today. I'm not being honest in my drawing, because why on earth should I? I'm being expressive, and I'm expressing not really what the building's saying, because the building's not saying much. I'm expressing what I want to say about the building, you know, how I want to describe it to you in visual terms. So that involves me overstating, saying more than need be said, you know, literally elevating something for my own personal enjoyment, you know, to kind of show that it's doable, that you can take a subject like this, which has a bit of character but not enough. You can take it on a grey day. It's a grey painted barn with old grey thatch, you know, that all looks quite, if not run down, but kind of original and honest and kind of weathered and almost medieval industrial somehow, that kind of farm look. And you're elevating it into something that feels super upbeat and full of energy and full of life, simply through these techniques, these colours and these different sort of kinds of mark making, these different line widths and pen techniques that kind of give the overall drawing this level of punch. It's often a question that, you know, you get asked if you urban sketch using pen rather than brush and watercolour. Are you not limited by how many pens you take? And yes, you are. There's a sense that whatever you take with you, you're missing one or two. There's something not there. So it is a process of, over a period of drawings, you start to kind of, you know, the ones you need that month, as it were, that kind of season. You know the pens that are working well for you, the ones that you have a connection with, and you feel that sense of they need to be in the bag, you know, and within a short period those pens are out. I mean, you'll see me using things like the gel highlighters that I only purchased a few weeks ago, because they're in my bag because they're current. I suppose I should really do some kind of I don't know, a tour of my pen bag at some point. I do get asked to do that. It's just that the pens change so often. I always feel as if, I don't know, there'd have to be one every month or something, just to show that the point is it's a living collection, by which I mean it's changeable. It changes for different weather conditions in terms of summer and winter, and it changes for the kind of drawing you intend doing and the kind of time you have. It changes because of the circumstance. I mean, if I'm traveling somewhere, I might take a very, very small bag of pens that I can just keep in my jacket pocket when I'm traveling on the plane, rather than have some kind of massive set that it's going to kind of feel like a burden. So it's a very fluid and sort of flexible set. Drawing's coming to a close now. Final kind of textural details. Here I'm showing some of the grain within the wood. And again, I'm not actually doing this from observation, other than the fact I know the barn is made of wood. So I know wood has grain on it. So I'm showing that grain. I don't care whether it's shown in the actual finish. I think it's so thick with paint that you can't really see any wood grain there. but I think it's a nice way of finishing that drawing off, that little textural flourish with a soft brush pen, just to give it that sense of richness. The detail is a strange word, in urban sketching. It's often just a little flourish of textural enhancement on the drawing, and it really brings everything alive. So that's fun drawing. There's our barn. It's always nice to feel that that moment of understanding between you and the thing you've drawn. By the end of it, drawing a thing is really understanding it. There's something about the depth in which you're looking on some level, the depth at which you're responding, that makes you feel connected to a thing in a strange way. You feel quite affectionate towards it. Here's the final piece. Thank you so much for taking the time to look at this. I hope you've picked up on the idea that it doesn't, you don't have to wait until you see something super impressive. You just have to find something that has a comfortable chair, or at least a chair or a bench, and you have to have a couple of fun pens in your bag, and the rest is down to you.